The comeback arcades have made over the last decade is one of the greatest things to happen in modern times, right up there with the Cinnamon Challenge. Okay, kidding aside, I've been tickled pink by the quantity and quality of arcades, barcades, and even bowling alleys that have given me many options to drop a small fortune in quarters on many excellent arcade games and pinball titles they've provided. Funny enough, there are actually more arcades in my immediate area now than there was back in the early 90s when I was a kid. I know, pretty crazy, right? With arcades becoming more and more popular again, many companies have tried capitalizing on their resurgence in popularity in various ways. This has taken the form of various compilations for home consoles, movies, mini arcade cabinets, and even full-sized arcade cabinets aimed at general consumers. More than any other company, though, Arcade1Up has nailed this trend by offering replica arcade cabinets that anyone can buy and enjoy within the comfort of their own home. Not only that, but these cabinets provide added value by giving you multiple arcade classics on just one machine. And before I get too far ahead of myself, let's address the elephant in the room here. Yes, these are reproduction arcade machines using modern displays via an emulator instead of an authentic PCB. Unfortunately, many arcade purists look at these modern cabinets as steaming piles of cheap, demonic Triceratops crap, but they're really missing the point of these machines entirely. Sure, we'd all love to own an original Galaga cabinet from the early 80s or a 6-player X-Men cabinet, but these machines are old, prone to issues, and sadly many of them have been destroyed, cannibalized, and lost over the decades since their original releases. Not only that, but these original cabinets were never marketed at general consumers and often cost way more than any average person could ever afford or fit into their ranch-style suburban home. Arcade1Up's machines literally address all these issues and allow everyday people, even people living in a small studio apartment, to own their very own TMNT cabinet or NBA Jam machine. Even if it isn't running off original hardware, you're never going to know the difference while playing against a friend in the corner of your living room on your very own Marvel vs. Capcom cabinet. And also, beyond being able to play these classic games from our past, how cool is it just to have your own arcade machine, even if it isn't the original, real thing? But with that out of the way, I have very high hopes for the future of the Arcade1Up brand and future machines that may or may not be in development. Given the licensing nightmare it must have been to make cabinets of games like Turtles in Time and Marvel Superheroes, I have a ton of faith in Arcade1Up's ability to bring future classics of licensed properties like The Simpsons, Jurassic Park, or Alien vs. Predator to the masses. On top of that, the recent Star Wars seated cabinet has proven 1UP will also go above and beyond the standard stand-up arcade cabinet and offer immersive sit-down machines as well. So what's next? A racing seat like the ones on classic racing games like Cruisin' USA and Rush? I freaking hope so. The possibilities seem endless, and it really makes you wonder what Arcade1Up has up their sleeves for the future. This got me thinking about what 1UP machines I'd completely lose my shit over if announced. And here they are, my top 5 Arcade1Up machines that need to be made. 1UP, if you're watching, pull out the pen and paper and start taking notes. Number 5, Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter has been one of my all-time favorite classic fighting games ever since I first laid eyes on the original 1993 machine at an arcade at my local shopping mall growing up. In 1993, these graphics blew my mind in the same way Crysis made 2007 tweens spew their Code Red Mountain Dew all over their plasma computer monitors. Yes, this actually looked impressive to people in the early 90s. We were a simple folk back then, yeah. But questionable tastes aside, this game not only looked good, but was unlike anything we'd played up to that point. Gone were the fireballs, flaming uppercuts, and 500-pound sumos supermaning across the stage. And in were moon physics and drunkenly falling off fighting platforms? God, we really were idiots back in the 90s, weren't we? But no, Virtua Fighter is actually a really fun game and was a cool, more grounded approach to other fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2. Personally, Virtua Fighter and its sequel, Virtua Fighter 2, are among the most nostalgic and special games for me, since both were must-plays whenever I came across one back in the day. Because of this, the thought of owning my very own Virtua Fighter cabinet in my home and being able to relive those memorable trips to arcades as a kid sounds more intoxicating than drinking from Shundi's gourd of happy fighting juice. Since many Arcade1Up machines come packed with 2 or more arcade games, let's just go ahead and throw the first 3 Virtua Fighter games on this one glorious machine. Hell, if Sega is feeling really generous, why not also add Fighting Vipers to the mix for good measure. So Sega, Arcade 1UP, if you're listening, make this lifelong Virtua Fighter maniac happy and give us 90s kids an awesome Virtua Fighter cabinet, please. But more than that, watch my other 4 picks and make those first. Yeah. Number 4, 1990s Star Wars arcade games. Arcade 1UP recently gave us the original arcade trilogy of Star Wars arcade games, making many people who fondly remember these machines from the 80s very, very happy. However, for us avocado toast eating millennials and dabbing zoomers, we never really had these cool machines in our arcades growing up, and therefore never had that connection with them. However, a local bowling alley I used to go to actually had an original Star Wars arcade cabinet from the early 80s. However, I remember it not really working that well, so yeah, that kinda sucked. But anyhow, most people around my age remember playing either the 1993 Star Wars Trilogy arcade by Sega, or their 1997 Star Wars Arcade Trilogy machine. While I remember coming across the 1993 release on a handful of occasions, it's particularly the 1997 game that I dropped a small fortune into at Dave & Buster's over the years. More than any other Star Wars arcade game, this game was able to capture that look and feel of Star Wars perfectly, not only giving us epic space and snowspeeder battles, but also on-foot missions as well. And don't even get me started on how blown away I was by frickin' taking on Boba Fett or Vader with a lightsaber. I mean, how? But it would be completely amazing if 1UP could include both these excellent 1990s Star Wars arcade games on just one machine, and of course, offering us a sit-down version as well for a few extra dineros. Doing this would allow both lovers of the 1993 game and people like me who adore the 1997 release to have both these excellent games in just one place, making us the happiest nerds alive. But please, 1UP, make us Star Wars and arcade fans' dreams come true with this one. Number 3, Cruisin' Series. Everyone has memories of their favorite arcade racers. For some of you boomers, it's Outrun or Turbo. For some people around my age, it was Ridge Racer or the Rush series of games. But for me, it was undoubtedly Midway's Cruisin' series of arcade racers. Yep, few things were cooler than being a 10-year-old sitting in a race seat and driving not Ferraris or not Supras across the USA or in other exotic locations in its 2 sequels. These games were everywhere when I was a kid. My local arcade had most of them while growing up. A Pizza Hut I used to go to had Cruisin' USA forever, and my local Dave & Buster's had all of them at one point or another. I mean, there was literally no escaping the Cruisin' series during the 1990s. I actually loved them so much that of course I had to own their inferior console ports on the N64 as well. Beyond the compromised graphics and sound, probably the part I was the most bummed about were the lack of exploding cows and trophy girl boobies. I mean, that's like half the appeal of these games, right? But anyhow, my dream would be for Arcade 1UP to go all out and create an actual sit-down cabinet like the ones in the arcade with all 3 of these now classic arcade racer games included on just one machine. Sure, it'll cost at least $500 and take up half my living space, but honestly, it would be so worth it. So give us sexy trophy girls and exploding cows 1UP. The last 20 years haven't had enough of either as far as I'm concerned. But anyhow, moving on. Number 2, Area 51. Right up there with Sega, Namco, and Konami, Midway also produced some of the coolest arcade machines throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. One of those Midway titles that burned a massive hole in my pocket as a kid was Area 51. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of discovery zones, laser tag places, bowling alleys, restaurants, and arcades I visited as a kid that had one of these cabinets. I've literally dropped several $100s into Area 51 during my lifetime, and that amount continues to grow each time I happen to come across this one. And then there's Maximum Force, which while not as good as Area 51, was still a memorable staple of my arcade experience throughout the 1990s. It was especially cool when I came across one of the Area 51 Maximum Force combo cabs and got to blast through both games back to back with a friend. However, if the moon was full and I had a 4-leaf clover stuck to the bottom of my shoe, I'd come across Area 51's 1998 sequel, Site 4. I rarely ever came across Site 4, but the few times I did, I remember it being just as as awesome as the first game. Having all three of these very awesome and very memorable Midway light gun arcade shooters on a single arcade 1-up machine would literally be a dream come true for so many different reasons. Since consoles like the Wii and the PlayStation 3 have shown that light gun type games can be played on modern TVs, I have to imagine that 1UP could easily make these games work on one of their cabinets, along with dozens of other excellent 90s and 2000s light gun shooters. Putting this tech to use to bring me an awesome Area 51 Maximum Force Sight 4 cabinet will be awesome, but not nearly as awesome as my #1 dream 1UP arcade cabinet. Number 1, House of the Dead. Light gun games were everywhere in the 1990s, and for me, they were some of the most nostalgic arcade experiences from my childhood and teens. While there were many excellent light gun games in the arcade, the House of the Dead series stands above all others as not only the most memorable, but also the most fun for me. Luckily, for us 90s kids, we got an outstanding home port of House of the Dead 2 for the Dreamcast. However, pretty much every port of the first game outside the arcade kinda sucked. That's why Arcade 1UP giving us an arcade perfect port of the first game, along with its sequel, would make my heart sing with joy and also 1,000 zombie moans. But why stop there? This is the part where you thought I was going to mention House of the Dead 3 being included on this compilation, right? Wrong. While House of the Dead 3 is a pretty good game, it just isn't nearly as good as the first two games. On top of that, by the time House of the Dead 3 came out, the series just wasn't as iconic as it once was either. So, what other game could you throw on a cabinet where you blow the limbs and heads off of zombies? Why? 1997's The Lost World Jurassic Park, of course. Yeah, zombies and genetically engineered dinosaurs go together like peas and carrots, right? Okay, very weird mashup aside, The Lost World was one of the most memorable and fun light gun titles back in the day that, unlike the first two House of the Dead games, never actually got a home port. But Arcade 1UP could change all that by including these three excellent games on just one cabinet, making the world a slightly better place as a result. So there you have it, my list of Arcade 1UP machines that need to be made. If you're watching this Arcade 1UP, please, I beg you, give just one of these machines to us and I can die happy. But more importantly, you'd make thousands of other gamers very, very happy by allowing them to own a piece of the arcades they grew up with. These are all excellent games and ones we'd all love to play in our homes, especially on our very own arcade cabinet. But anyhow, what would your dream Arcade 1UP machine be? What games would you include on it? Let me know in the comments below, hit that like button if you enjoyed my video, check out some of my other videos if you feel like it, and don't forget to sub if you liked what you saw. And as always, take care of yourselves.